Let's move on, because on the back pages of all of the newspapers today, the GAA have confirmed that they're sticking with the new date for the Tyrone Kerry All-Ireland football semi-finals. That's Saturday week. Yesterday afternoon a statement was issued by the Gaelic Players Association, and I'm delighted to say Tom Parsons, the Chief Executive of the GPA, is with us this morning. Tom, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Good morning. How are things, Ger?
It's a pretty complex situation, and I think everybody has a lot of sympathy for all of the sides involved, for you guys representing the players, for the two camps involved, and for Croke Park because of COVID. And I think with that in mind, there's been less heat in this debate than maybe there would have been around fixtures in the past. So could you maybe just bring us right up to date? What is the very latest? In your statement yesterday, you talked about offering the Tyrone squad the use of your health screening, the GPA's health screening. What is that, and are they taking you up on that offer?
Yeah, so I suppose firstly, Ger, it's a terrible position, you know, the work put in by Tyrone and all teams to get to this stage in the semi-final, and to get hit like this, it's just really the unthinkable for a team and for a player. You know, a lot of players would have put in 12 to 18 months, and for some players years to get to an All-Ireland semi-final. So I can only imagine, you know, the worry on families, on the team, and knowing the situation. And the situation, Ger, is that, you know, it looks like 50% of the squad has contracted the virus. And when you look at a squad is typically 32 to 35 players. And in that, you usually have 3 or 4 injuries. So it means there's only 15 or 16 players fit. So there's just so many unknowns because, you know, in the coming days, players are returning back from isolation. And you know, it's subjective. Symptoms and how we react to symptoms is subjective. So there's no unknowns. And I suppose in talking with the Tyrone management team, they have a fantastic screening process in place themselves. What we do with the GPA, and we've offered all teams, Ger, is that we have a very comprehensive cardiac screening and health screening that might help alleviate concern of players or allow squads to know if they're in a position to play a game or not. No, so that's been offered to the Tyrone team, and they're in consultation with their medical team, but they have a lot of those provisions in place. So, you know, it's just a really worrying time. And, you know, from a GPA perspective, and personally, if there's one thing that would keep me awake at night is the worry of a player, you know, players' welfare going on the field of play. And there's a worry at the moment.
Tom, could I just ask, the 50% of people that you mentioned there that have contracted COVID, is there a certain section of the squad on top of that then who aren't able to play due to being in close contact?
No, as far as I'm aware, and I haven't went in or even went asking details of who, but it looks like 50% of the squad in the here and now will be unavailable to play or will have been in close contact or have contracted the virus, you know. So I don't have the specific details, but that is what it looks like. And you know, some are coming out of it now, some are coming out of it at the weekend, and some on Tuesday. So you know, it's changing. It's a very fluid situation, and that's why, you know, I think Brian Dooher said, you know, in his media this week, that we can't make a decision in the here and now because there's just so many unknowns. And I suppose in the GPA statement, you know, that's something we said is for the Gaelic family to, you know, to give as much space as they can to allow a decision to be made, because you just don't know. And the right decision is to put the player welfare first. And from a GPA perspective, if that means, you know, standing down even on a Tuesday before a Saturday game because that's the decision that protects player welfare, that's the right decision to make.
When you say standing down, do you mean that if the Tyrone squad decide that they're not able to play, you guys are going to back them in that and ask for a postponement collectively?
Yeah, well, there's two things, and I think the GPA's position on as postponement and standing down it's very clear, you know, like under no circumstance can we risk player welfare. That just has to be a non-negotiable, and I think it's a non-negotiable for the GAA as well. If postponing the game by another week helps to ensure player welfare, that's the right thing to do, absolutely. But another week is no guarantee, you know. It's subjective and it's fluid, and players are presenting and coming out of isolation over the next coming days. So, whatever the ultimate decision is to protect player welfare, either not playing the game or if 1 week does make the difference, and it may not, the GPA would support that. I think, a key message here, and I hope we all reflect on it, is that at the end of the day, it means the world to players at this level, but it is only a game of football. And players have lives, they're amateur, they have partners, they have kids in creches and schools and jobs. So we just need to put this into perspective as well. There's so many unknowns, but that certainly is the GPA's position, is player welfare is 100% paramount.
So if the screening suggests that enough of the squad are fit to play, then you guys would suggest that is the box ticked, or certainly as much as you possibly can, in terms of enough of the squad is available to play, the game should go ahead. But if enough of the players come back and the health screening suggests they're not able to play, the GPA's position would be it's not fair to play this game. In that instance, are you asking for, are you as an organisation officially saying, let's kick this back a week and give ourselves that breathing space to see what happens?
Yeah, if a week is deemed will help protect player welfare, yeah, absolutely, we'd back that. And it is challenging, and that might be the decision in the here and now. And even at that, it doesn't guarantee that the squad will be good to play. And screening too, Jared, it's objective, and it'll give you a measurement, but the subjective element is how are you actually feeling. And a player might be feeling well on a Friday, and on a Sunday just can't move and can't play the game. So it's a really difficult position, and it's a really difficult position for the management team, because, and I know personally, players will want to play. If I've done it myself. I've had crazy injuries, and I wouldn't disclose some injuries to a medical team because I wanted to play an All-Ireland semi-final or final. So players will want to represent their county and their supporters and grasp the opportunity. And that's where the risk lies. So there's so many unknowns at the moment, and I think we might know a little bit more at the weekend when the management team sees the players who are returning from isolation in action and seeing how they're presenting.
And I suppose the other thing is that, say we did push this back a week on the basis that we think that it's going to be fairer, and then suddenly an outbreak happens in the Kerry camp. It's a disaster scenario from the GAA's perspective as well. So in those terms, is it possible that this fixture won't be fulfilled and that actually Tyrone won't be able to, as you said, it is ultimately just a game of football, and if the right thing for them to do from a welfare perspective is not to play the game, is there a scenario that you envisage where Kerry could actually end up in an All-Ireland final without playing a semi-final?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reality here. Is this is a very serious case, and the comments made by Tyrone this week, shouldn't be taken lightly, and they're not reflecting those comments lightly, that there's the risk they won't play the game. That's the words of Brian Dooher and and Fergal Logan, the management team. Decisions. This is the challenging piece. Is there's so many scenario planning, and what if this happens, and the ripple effect. But when you look at the hierarchy of decision making, it's player welfare, and unfortunately, you need to make a decision in the here and now with what's in front of you, and that's where they're at. They just don't know in the here and now if they'll be able to fulfil the fixture, and I do think as a Gaelic family, we need to give them space to really evaluate the situation in the coming days.
Is your information that all the Tyrone players are going to be out of isolation this weekend then?
I don't have the specifics, but I know a lot of them are coming out of isolation this weekend, and maybe a few even the following weekend.
And then, sorry Tom, who is then going to be carrying out the health screening? It's somebody within Tyrone GPA, and then they will present that information to you and to the GPA. Is that how it will then work this weekend, when they can do it with whoever is out of isolation?
Yeah, so look, we've offered our comprehensive health screening to the whole squad if they want to take that up. But I know they have a very comprehensive medical team themselves who carry out cardiac screening and can individually take any player to do that screening. So there's no doubt about it. They've a fantastic medical team who have their finger on the pulse on this as well, and will be assessing players as they go. So, that the assessment, that's the objective piece. It's there's no right or wrong answer. If somebody comes out of an isolation period, that doesn't mean they're ready to play. 3 weeks' time doesn't mean they're ready to play. If a player doesn't feel well, and if that's shown on the pitch, and a player isn't meeting their max speeds and the GPS, if their heart rate or their resting heart rate is through the roof, if they look fatigued, I think they're all indications. And we have to remember as well is that this is an environment where you're going into a ferocious environment where your heart rate is going to be at 170 beats per minute. Your max speed is 32, 33 kilometers per hour, and you just don't know. Somebody might be feeling well on a day-to-day basis and not showing symptoms. When you put them into that position, that high performance position, we just don't know how they'll react. So that's the situation it's in. It's very serious and it's very worrying.
And that's the tricky part, Tom, isn't it? Because for you can make the decision that someone feels fit or doesn't feel fit, and then they play, and they either play as well as they've ever done or they don't play well. And for your organisation, like standing in, you can't be definitive and say this game can't go ahead. You can't be definitive and say this game has to go ahead.
Yeah, and you can't say, the players will want to play. The last thing the players will want is myself or the GPA to say postpone the game, because they'll want to play. This is an opportunity to play an All-Ireland semi-final, and there's a cohort of players who are fit and ready to play. But all that we know at the moment is that if there's 15 or 16 healthy players, you cannot play a game without bringing in subs. So there'll be people in the here and now players in the here and now that'll be going into the field of play that will have had COVID in the last number of weeks, and there's just an unknown there. So it's a really challenging situation, and I think we all need to show compassion, and it's really challenging for Kerry as well and the other teams involved in the competition, because there's an unknown. But I think if we just respect the care of players and take a little bit of time to allow Tyrone space to assess the situation and see where things are at, even this weekend, I think that's important that the whole Gaelic family allows that to happen.
In that context, Tom, then I just wanted two final quick questions. Were you surprised that the GAA issued the formal declaration about the throw-in time and the fixtures were announced yesterday officially? This game's going ahead next week. Was that a bit of a surprise from your guys' perspective?
No, not really. Maybe that's something that they put out, and I'm sure there'll be more communication this weekend, with the lay of the land, and there might be another decision to be made. I don't know. But I know from a GPA or GAA perspective, they don't want to risk player welfare. They don't want that to happen, and there's still unknowns, and the Tyrone management team have said that we just don't know. And that's the reality, and it's not an out here, because there's no right or wrong answer in these situations. So I think we'll just have to sit tight and see what comes out at the weekend, and see what further requests come from Tyrone, and take it from there. And we'll keep in close contact with the players.
And what are the Kerry players saying to you, Tom?
Look, I suppose it's an absolute given, without even disclosing any conversations, that no player wants to put another player's welfare or well-being at risk. That's the number one priority. And I don't think any team, I remember going into All-Ireland finals, and as much as I do anything as a past my own player to win an All-Ireland final, if we got news in the morning of a final that the Dublins of this world picked up a vomiting bug and can't play the game, we wouldn't want to play the game. You want to win it on merit, and there's no doubt about it. Kerry will want to play fully fit Tyrone team, and will want that opportunity. So it's challenging, but from a player's perspective, I think every single player wants to ensure the welfare of other players, and that's paramount, and that's a given.
Just one last one for me, Tom. This is obviously an unprecedented situation, especially given the scale that you've outlined of the cases in the Tyrone camp. We did see something relatively similar last year with the Sligo football team, for example, and they were turfed out of the championship. They didn't get a chance to postpone. Did they make any lobbying, or did they have any conversations with the GPA around that time to try and get postponements?
Yeah, no, that happened very quick last year, and to be honest, it's like every decision nearly needs to be made in isolation, and it's probably very different too, because it was, an early stage of COVID, and GA and Gaelic games trying to find their feet with fixtures, and also it was at the start of a competition, so there's probably a difference here because there's three teams left, so it's not upsetting the whole ecosystem of the competition. So at the time, I can't remember the details of the time if there was huge lobbying, but I don't think there was, and it's hard. Some people are saying, has this precedence been set with other teams? I really think in a global pandemic that we need flexibility in decision making and weigh up what's the decision in front of you. And the decision in front of us here is that it's at the very tail end of a season. There's 3 teams left. Most counties could go on and push on with their club season. This is an unprecedented 50% of the squad. So we just need to just keep that in mind and be completely respectful. This isn't having one rule for one team and another rule for others. Like, it's just the stage of a competition with teams left, and regardless, from a GPA perspective, it's welfare, it's protecting the welfare and the well-being of players.
Tom, good stuff. We'll let you go. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Tom Parsons, the Chief Executive of the GPA there. And what do you make of this? The 50% of the squad, we kind of heard that figure bandied about, but that's it confirmed this morning for us. And also the fact that some players won't be coming out of isolation until next weekend anyway. So you could be coming out of isolation and then playing an All-Ireland semi-final against Kerry. It's a very tough scenario.
Yeah, it is. It's a desperate situation for Tyrone in particular, and I think as well there are so many different complicated layers to this that I wouldn't be surprised if there were people in the Tyrone camp who thought one way and people in the Tyrone camp who didn't think the same way. And I mean, that's just the nature of this beast, that I'm sure there are lads out there who are raring to go and fully healthy, let's not forget that, and are willing to go as soon as their teammates get out of isolation. Then I'm sure there are some of the team who are just getting out of isolation. They're like, lads, I mean, as he said, the objective health screening, the objective part of it is only half of it. How they actually feel could be a totally different story, and they could be like, lads, I'm not ready to play.
Well, some of the people could be asymptomatic as well. That's the other part of it.
Yeah.
And some people won't have any impact on them. So and it depends on what proportion of that team were already vaccinated, and whether or not they've had one vaccine or 2 vaccines, and not, all of a sudden then you're into, we're not going to pry about the individual details of any of the people on the panels, but fairly difficult situation for everybody involved. It'll be very interesting to see when that screening comes back what impact it has, and what's the go no go point. Where is it like 5 of the 15 are showing residual symptoms? Okay, that's grand. You've got enough in the remaining 25 of your squad members, but what if those 5 are your 5 best players? How does this work?
There is no precedent for that, unfortunately, and that is why I fear for Tyrone in this if they want to get the game pushed back another week. And I think it was quite pointed from the GAA yesterday in sending tickets out to the club members of Tyrone and Kerry who'd got their tickets, and to fixing the All-Ireland final time and fixing the Tyrone rescheduled time.
But they have to do that? You think it's a power move?
Sure. A little bit. I think that there was... I understand that they have to do it ASAP, and the sooner the better and all that, but it did feel a little bit like this was a very developing story, and they had to go out and publish that information yesterday, and it felt like a line in the sand where it was like, lads, we're not moving, we're not budging, we've already given you a week. Our information is that the vast majority of you will be allowed to roam free before throw-in time, and that's all we care about. Fair enough if you're all locked up and you literally cannot leave your own house, then we might have something to consider. But if their information is that you have to roam free, then you can see why somebody will say we just have to play the fixture, because then, as you say, it comes down to all these different complicated layers. What if the health screening is like 5 of our best players can't play. Does that then constitute an extra week? What constitutes an extra week?
Yeah.
And maybe the GAA weighed all that up and said nothing does as long as the players can show up.
Yeah, or if they can't show up, that's very unfortunate, and it will always be an asterisk on this season that we didn't have a second All-Ireland football semi-final, but the asterisk is actually that there was a global pandemic as opposed to you being victimised in this.
The other situation, instead of a bye, and that is the worst case scenario for everybody, would be reinstating the Ulster runners-up, and I don't think that would suit Monaghan, to be honest. I'm sure that once your season is done, it's done, and getting back up for a game just wouldn't be possible, and that would also have an asterisk beside it as well, because the Ulster
what if they won?
is the most important thing. So
what if they came through that and beat Mayo? Or
would it be better than a walkover in the semi-final from your perspective?
Yeah, I think I can't imagine it ever happening, because the rules were no backdoor this year, and you can't have a team who's beaten back in the championship. You open yourself up to a lot of, they got back in, why don't I get back in?
Yeah, there is no. Certainly, when I'm combing through this, there is no sort of eventuality where I'm like, that's going to satisfy everyone. And as I say, I'm sure there are people in Kerry as well who are completely split on this as well. Like as Tom said, if he was coming up against a Dublin team who had a vomiting bug, he wouldn't want to play against them. I think the Kerry players probably feel the same way, that they want this game. I think they kind of need the game, to be honest with you, if you're looking at it in coldly and in a competitive level. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if there were other people who were thinking, nah, yeah, Tyrone, you've got to show up next week. But I'd say some of the players would give them as long as they want.
All right, 087 9 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can give us your thoughts on this. Should the game go ahead as it is? Should there be an extra week found in the calendar somehow at this point? If you're a Kerry supporter, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you're a Tyrone supporter, do you feel like you're being victimised, or actually is this about fair? Is a week enough time to try and get your house in order, see what's happening, and see what the crack is with that?